Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our January California Brokers Business Accelerator Q&A, Hear What Your Broker Has to Say, hosted by our Temecula broker, Michelle Beeson, but also featuring a panel of our other California brokers, Tom Bola, Jeff Green, and Omar Helmond. Referrals are the gift that keeps on giving here at Allison James. Therefore, we want to reward you for your agent referrals to us. For the remainder of the month of January, for every agent you refer to us, you will receive an Allison James branded journal. Even if the agent you refer doesn't join, you will still receive this fun little gift. For the month of February, our gift to you will be Allison James branded socks. Also, keep an eye out on your emails as there is a chance for you to win a cash prize every month. To refer an agent to us, please go to Allison James University and click on the Referrals tab. From there, you will find a form that you can fill out with the agent's information. Also, I always like to remind you guys that Allison James has an in-house transaction coordinator company called Shark TC. Our in-house transaction coordinators are licensed, knowledgeable, and experienced. You can have your first transaction done with Shark TC for just $99. To learn more, please visit the Allison James University dashboard and click on the Transaction Coordinator button. From there, you will be taken to a page where you can fill out a form to learn more. And you can get your first transaction started right away. For $99, you can't go wrong. We have gone ahead and accumulated questions that have been sent to us throughout the week that we are going to ask during this presentation. If any other questions come up along the way, or you have some in mind, please go ahead and type them in the chat box on your Zoom control panel. With that said, let's go ahead and get started with our Q&A session. Good morning, brokers.
Good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
All right, so one of our first questions that we had come up, and Michelle, I'll let you start with this one. An agent asked, they're a brand new agent, so what are some affordable things that I should focus on to start generating business?
Well, I know that when you first start, it's really easy to just feel like you need to learn everything. And I always tell people to kind of slow their roll a little bit and focus on the most important things. So getting your system in place for your CRM, I think, is one of the most important things. Of course, besides learning your MLS and your, how to operate them, how to operate your MLS and your car forms, is get your CRM in place, because the first thing, in my opinion, that is the most affordable is start working your sphere right away. So you want to let your sphere know that you're a licensed realtor and you need to get the word out. There's a lot of ways to do that, besides just networking and letting people know in a nice way and in not a pushy way. You want to utilize your social media for that. Make sure it's balanced, that you're not always pushing real estate, but you do want to remind people on a regular basis in your sphere that you are a realtor. And then also be consistent. So the first thing I would do, besides getting my CRM and learning how to use it, is to sit down and make my plan for touching my sphere on a regular basis and a consistent basis. So whether that be 4 or 5 times a year, you sit down and write a handwritten note. And then you also schedule your social media, like, I'm going to do 3 personal posts, and then I'm going to do a real estate information post. Remember to provide value, not sell. And then other than that, I think that you should find a cause. Everybody has something that they're passionate about. So figure out what that passion is for you. If it's helping orphans, if it's contributing and networking regarding breast cancer research or, things like that. I think it's really important to find your passion, because that's going to be easy for you to share with people on social media. And eventually, if you're occasionally sharing information about a certain orphanage or about a certain charity or nonprofit, you become known for that. And that's just another way to be recognized as the realtor who supports Michelle's Place for breast cancer research or something like that. So those, I think, are the most important things, just getting your name out there, reminding people, not constantly, but every so often, that you are a realtor, and showing your knowledge and providing your value to your sphere. Anyone else have anything they would suggest?
The only thing I might add to that would be, and I agree with everything Michelle said, it was a great answer, would be, from day one, start and continue your training and your education when it comes to real estate. Being knowledgeable and up to date is so vitally important to agents, and that'll go a long way in establishing credibility with your clients when you have that behind you as your base for this business.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add something to that if I could. Everybody that gets licensed and starts a real estate career, you're on a race with your checkbook or your bank account to start getting deals before you run out of money. If you run out of money, you're going to run out of business. You're done. So one of the things that I would suggest, two things, is open houses, which are free basically. Sometimes you can even borrow signs from the listing agent if you don't have signs. And worst case scenario, you don't do signs and people find you online. That's not optimal. The second thing, which a lot of agents don't do, but if you're new, and this is something I did, is talk to all the top producing agents in the company. Present yourself to them, make a presentation and say, hey, I know you're really busy. If you've got listings and you have buyers that you cannot work, I will pay you a referral to work those buyers. And you might end up paying a very steep referral, a very expensive referral, but it doesn't matter because that buyer, you didn't procure them through your advertising, so you don't have any acquisition cost for that lead. But what you want to do is get some business fast and get some paychecks fast and get some transaction history as fast as possible, because that will begin to create momentum for you, and you'll be able to say to others, well, I've closed X amount of deals, and hopefully get something within the next few weeks out the gate when you first get licensed.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's great.
I think some of these are really good points. But I want to add something, if I may. A lot of agents that enter into the business within the first couple of years, they leave. 90% of agents, I think the statistic is, are out within the first 3 years. Why is that? I think it's because they don't treat it like an actual business. As Jeff was saying, you have an equity problem. How are you using your dollars? You have to run it like a business, like any other business would, a startup business essentially. And you either got to put sweat equity into your business, or you have to put actual dollars into your business for marketing and attain new business. So just keep that in mind. I think those are the two main points that I wanted to add. Other than that, I think everything else you guys have added is absolutely great.
Perfect. I know Jeff had said something about open houses, so that actually kind of leads us into another question that we got, which is, can you give me some tips for holding a successful open house?
Do you want me to start with this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I think that we need to do a few things to have a really successful open house. Keeping in mind, we're not necessarily, if the house sells, it's great, but we should be using that not only to get buyer leads, but also seller leads. And the best way to do that is to have a plan and do it consistently with your plan. Of course, everything in real estate, you should have your plan and stick to it and be consistent. But the tips that I give our agents is that first, they should utilize their social media. Not only, you put your open house in the MLS and in your realtor.com account and all of those, but you also utilize your social media. People love Facebook Lives, so start your open house with a Facebook Live, invite your viewers to the open house, and also to use an Instagram story is one of the things I recommend. They just put it on their Instagram story, and eventually that stuff will get a bigger and bigger following. And then I also tell them to be sure they have an open house sign-in app, not really pen and paper. It just becomes easier. A lot of times those can be integrated with your CRM, so you can just kind of put those leads right in there. And it's not something that you add to your to-do list, that you might forget to do later. And then, of course, the old school techniques of inviting the neighbors. So what I always tell people is to have a door hanger that you put out a couple days before, or a flyer that you drop on, a certain amount of homes in the area. And this is a great way to get seller leads. So if you drop the flyer on the door, and then on the day of the open house, show up early and knock on those doors and invite people on over to the open house. That's a great way to get seller leads. Agents tend to focus on getting the buyer leads from open houses, but you should be working the sellers as well. And then just a couple other tips. I always tell people to really do their research on the home that they're holding open and make sure you figure out what the comparables are out there. I always would have a list of available homes that I would just print out and staple. So if they wanted a tour, Cloud CRM has a great buyer tour. You could have those ready to pass out to buyers so they could go around and look at other homes, drive by. And they can also, if you have as far as specifically for the home, if you focus on 3 things that makes that home unique to the comparables, is a good thing to point out. And also to have a frequently asked questions sheet, regarding the home specifically. Like what are the HOA fees? What are that? So not that necessarily, again, you're trying to sell the house as much as get leads, but that just shows, in my opinion, more a deeper thought process and it shows that you're willing to go the extra mile for those people that are walking through the door. So I think that's it for me.
Cool. Yeah, that's all great information. Some of the agents that I know of that are the most effective when it comes to open houses are very meticulous when it comes to the preparation, the physical preparation of doing an open house. And by that, I mean, what they do is they'll get a map of the area surrounding the open house and mark off all the main intersections that are available to them for signage around the open house. Then on the Thursday before the open house, they'll go out and drive the neighborhood to make sure that where they've marked their open house signs is the most effective means of getting traffic into the home. On the day of the open house, if the open house is going, say, from 12 to 4, they'll leave their home by 10. Get out there, place their open house signs, and they'll do a number of signs for the open house. It varies from open house to open house, just depending on the property and the surrounding area. And then they'll show up at the open house a minimum of 30 minutes early, making sure the house is open, all the lights are on, and taking care of any last minute details that need to be taken care of. At the end of the day, what they like to do is stay 30 minutes beyond. So if the open house is advertised as ending at 4, they'll stay till 4:30, sometimes with the hope that as buyers circle the open house route in a given area, that they might try to get in after their last viewing and might try to see one more house. And by giving that extra 30 minutes, it gives them an opportunity to catch some stragglers that might be coming by late. It's proven to be very successful for them, and I know of a number of agents that have been very, very successful with the open house concept. Thank you.
I'd just like to throw something in here about open houses that a lot of people don't think about, and that is establishing metrics so that you know what your numbers are. If you're going to do open houses, it's just like any other lead generation. There's a conversion rate that you can establish, and you can, if you're new, talk to other agents and ask them, people that do a lot of them, what kind of attendance do you get? What is your conversion rate? So you have some goals, because if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So what you need to do is say, okay, for every open house, I'm going to get X amount of leads. Out of those leads, X amount are going to turn into showings, and X amount are going to turn into escrows. If you don't do that, you'll time out, you'll tap out, you'll lose your motivation for doing it. Another thing that I'd say about open houses is think volume. If you are new in the business, you don't have anything else to do but lead generation. You don't have any transactions to follow up on. There's nothing. You could hold an open house every day if you want to, and that may seem crazy, but think about this. There are places that people go every day. If the house is near the local elementary school where parents are coming to pick up their kids, hold an open house there, put your signs out, let people see that you're there. people can drive by at 3 in the afternoon and come into your open house for 10 or 15 minutes. You may not get that many, but the way to avoid the task aversion that's associated with that is to prepare yourself so that when you do go to an open house and it's slow, hopefully it's not slow, but if it is, you're still working. You have other things to do. You have all your computer stuff there. You have everything that you would do normally sitting at your desk. You can do that at an open house. So then you can double dip. You can be sitting there doing your work and then stop when somebody comes in, work the lead, and then go back to doing your work. So if you understand your metrics, you understand your numbers, you'll know how many open houses you'll need to do a month to generate enough leads to get prospects that will go out and see properties or list properties. And then you can set your goals based on that. But without goals, you'll fail. You'll fall flat on your face.
Omar, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think they've gotten a really good set of goals set for each open house. I think just being visible is my number one takeaway from everything the brokers have said. Plus, making sure that, again, your market. So when people ask you questions, all the details about the property, the neighborhood, and so forth. And I think all of that is very relevant to an open house. But don't just do a traditional open house where you have maybe 6 to 8 signs. Try to do 10, 15, 20 open house signs. So you're branding yourself for that neighborhood. If that's the farm that you're going after, be visible.
Yeah, definitely. The next question we had was, and Michelle, if you want to start with this one again, do you have any suggestions for closing gifts for my clients?
I actually get asked this a lot, and what I tell people to do is, instead of doing one big expensive closing gift at the end of the transaction, I think you should do little ones throughout the transaction, because that's going to have more of an impact. So, for example, when an offer gets accepted, I always tell people you should sit down and write a handwritten note to your client that you actually physically mail, congratulating them on their purchase or their sale, whatever it is. Just touching them that way. And then you can do things like take a inexpensive Home Depot card to the physical inspection. So that kind of alleviates a little bit of stress when the inspector's telling them, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. And then I always would give a bottle of champagne. I would have it delivered to the house when their loan would get approved. And then I think the best gift for the day of is like a move-in kit, because when they're moving, they're stressed out, they're trying to find the toilet paper and the Band-Aids and all of that stuff. So if you think of things that are packed away that you need when you're working around your house, like toilet paper, water, snacks, paper plates, you just do a little moving kit for that and deliver it, and have pizza delivered. I think those are affordable things that you kind of spread out through the transaction that I think have a bigger impact, because it shows you're being really thoughtful, not just going and buying one expensive thing at the end of the transaction.
A closing idea that I really thought was effective on one of my top producers that I managed at one time. He would, at the close of escrow, go to his client, the buyer, and suggest an open house for their friends. And my agent, then would put it together. His first request was to get a list of names that the client would like to invite. He would send, and their addresses and their contact information. He then would send out all the invitations to the friends and to the relatives as an open invitation to join the couple on their brand new purchase, their brand new home. He then would bring in a food truck who would, supply with hamburgers, hot dogs, tacos, whatever the case might be, and provide the food for the party. And then last but not least, he would provide a $200 gift certificate to the client so they could go to a Bevmo or a discount liquor type place to buy beer and wine for the get together. He wouldn't buy the beer and wine himself. He would have the client do that for insurance and liability reasons. And then And then he would throw the party. He would go in conjunction with this with his lender. So I would split the cost of all of that. And he said, Tom, it really isn't that expensive. The point of the whole get together was that the client would be so happy and so proud of their new home. The client would do nothing but talk about the agent and how great the agent was and how helpful the agent was, number one. And the lender. The lender got some traction out of this as well. And then number two, my agent had all the names and contacts so they could send out thank yous for attending. They put those names into their contact base so that when any new information he was sending out, generally speaking, he would send it to them as well. And that was a great way for him to build his contact list for that. So I thought that was very effective. He said it was very effective for him in getting new clients and listings and sales. So another idea.
Yeah.
I know Michelle, I know one of your agents does that, Dylan. He does parties at the end of his closings for his clients, and he does say exactly what Tom said. It is very effective.
Yeah, and Dylan is the epitome of hardworking and consistency, so he's great.
Yeah. Shout out to Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff or Omar, do you have anything you want to add to that question before we move on?
Nothing on my end.
The only other thing that makes a great closing gift is a home warranty. Particularly if the house is old, older than 10 or 12 years old, that's when things start breaking down. Things are going to break. The client's going to call you and they're going to say, what do I do? They're going to say, well, did the seller know this? All that stuff. If you have a home warranty, and I've had this happen multiple times, I'll have something break. I get the notice from the home warranty company that there was a service order. I call the client up and say, hey, was that handled? And it gives me a reason to call them other than, are you ready to sell your house now? Or do you know somebody that wants to buy a house? Both of which are both legitimate. Maybe the first one not as early as the other, but you call them up and say, hey, did everything get worked out? And man, I was so happy I was able to get that home warranty for you. I hope that helped. And that leaves them with a good thought, because you'll have a recurring reminder that you're in their life through that home warranty for the first year that they're in the house.
I was talking to Jeff the other day, and he was sharing an idea with me that he did back in the 1800s when he was practicing real estate. He would provide a musket to the client after they closed escrow for home protection. I thought that was a great idea.
That is.
Thanks, Tom. I thought we were going to keep that to ourselves.
Apparently not. Yeah.
Well, we're idea sharing.
We are.
It wouldn't be a CBBA without a little jabbing from Jeff and Tom. So, all right. We do have a couple more questions that we'll go through. Just remember, if you have any questions that come up, you want to add on to anything, and you're listening, feel free to type that in the chat box. But the next question we had, and Michelle, once again, I'll let you take it on this one. What are some tips? I'm sure you guys get this a lot. What are some tips for dealing with difficult clients?
Well, I think the biggest tip, we're kind of part psychologists in this business for sure. So the biggest tip I think is the most important thing I think people need to keep in mind is you always need to put yourself in that client's shoes and try to figure out, they're upset. Why are they upset? How are you going to solve that problem? We're relationship people and we're problem solvers, most of the time in this business. And so in order to make them feel like you actually are concerned with their concerns, is you need to listen more than you speak. You need to be empathetic with them. Remember, it's the most stressful thing they'll probably do. One of the most stressful things they'll probably do in their lives. If you're listening rather than trying to make your point, you're going to be able to decipher what it is that's really has them upset. And then I think, other than being empathetic, and I think the most important thing for us to do in this business is to master the art of not reacting and not taking things personal. Because most of the time it's not about us. We tend to take it personal and think it is about us. but it's really, there's something going on with your client that has them upset, and your job is to figure out what that is and find a way to solve it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have anything more to add than that.
I think the number one thing to do to keep to deal with difficult clients is to prevent the difficulty in the first place. Now, you can't prevent it with everybody, but if you have somebody that's abusive or really, really bad, you know, you have to make a decision on whether you want to work with them or not. And you do have that right, short of being an escrow. You know, you can't really jettison them at that point. But what really helps is to let people know what's going to happen next. So identifying all the milestones in the transaction, for instance, the purchase offer being finalized, the appraisal being ordered, the appraisal inspection being done, the inspections being done, what's going to happen next? So an example is, hey, the buyer just did their home inspection. What's going to happen next is they're likely to ask for some repairs. Mm-hmm. And you explain to them what that's going to be like, so that the first time they hear about it is in advance, not getting a request for repairs and freaking out that there's $5,000 of requests, that they didn't know this was going to happen. So I would say never finish a milestone in a transaction without telling them what's coming up next, because we do this every day. We know what's happening next. They don't. They do this maybe 4 or 5 times in their life, and it's a big mystery to them, the whole journey. They don't know what's going on. So if you can tell them what's going to happen next, you're likely to avoid a lot of drama and anger or angst in the transaction.
Education and preparation, right?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, you know, finding out prior to entering a transaction what's important to them, laying out the foundation for the relationship going forward, setting the expectation on your end, because you are the professional, you've gone through this before. You have to know that there are certain things that will come up, and you have to explain that to them. Be very thorough in your explanation, and setting the right expectation I think is very key, because if you don't and you try to meet certain problems when they arise, then it becomes a little more challenging to resolve those issues, and that's where a difficult client could potentially go sideways, and that's how you can avoid getting to those situations. But then if you are there now and you have a difficult client and you haven't done the proper steps prior to, I think the best thing to do is just try to ask the questions to help them resolve what's important to them. What's, you know, make it a list. What's number one on your most important list, and then kind of go down from there and try to resolve it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And that actually is a perfect lead into, if we don't get any more questions in the chat box, we'll go ahead and end with this one, which I think is a good one to end with, especially after our last question. And I think I know the answer to this one, but Michelle, how soon should an agent call their broker when a problem arises?
Right away. I think you should call your broker. Yeah, I think you should call your broker even if you feel like a problem's going to arise. For nothing else, you know, we've got a little bit more experience in dealing with things than, you know, your average agent. So we kind of probably have already been there and done that. And then also, you know, it's a somebody else's viewpoint from the outside, which is really important. So we might be able to point out things that the agent's not seeing. So, of course, in my opinion, you call them right away. That's what I tell my agents all the time is I want to get involved before it festers. I don't want you guys sitting there thinking you can handle it and just letting things fester and get worse. Let's nip it in the bud from the beginning.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Keep in mind that, you know, we as brokers are not emotionally involved in the transaction, whether it's a listing or sale or whatever the dispute might be. So by coming to your broker and us being emotionally uninvolved with the situation, a lot more times, you know, we can think of the details that might affect the outcome of an action. So, you know, please call your broker. Even if you think you know what's going on and what the answer and how to proceed, it's always good to call your broker and brainstorm and just kind of talk about it so we can make sure, the broker may not have anything new to add other than beyond what you're considering or thinking. But on the other hand, we might be able to, and that might keep you out of a lot of difficulty and a lot of trouble. So please, please, please call your broker.
I think you guys have said it best. Reach out to your broker for any questions. We're always available.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this month's California Brokers Business Accelerator. And of course, thank you to Michelle and all of our California brokers, Tom, Jeff, and Omar, for all of your wonderful insight as always. Thanks again for joining us today, and thank you to anyone who sent in questions prior to this webinar. You guys know if any questions do come up, do not hesitate, as they all just said, do not hesitate to reach out to them and ask them any questions at any time. That's what they are there for, and they are there and willing to help at all times. I hope everyone has a wonderful last week of January before we head into February. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.